A Deer in the Works by Kurt Vonnegut Jr. The big black stacks of the Ilium Works of the Federal Apparatus Corporation spewed acid fumes and soot over the hundreds of men and women who were lined up before the red brick employment office. The Ilium Works, already the second largest industrial plant in America, was increasing its staff by 1/3 in order to meet armament contracts. Every 10 minutes or so, a company policeman opened the employment office door, letting out a chilly gust from the air-conditioned interior and admitting 3 more applicants. "Next 3, said the policeman sleepily. A middle-sized man in his late 20s, his young face camouflaged with a mustache and spectacles, was admitted after a 4-hour wait. His spirits and the new suit he'd bought for the occasion were wilted by the fumes and the August sun, and he'd given up lunch in order to keep his place in line. But his bearing remained jaunty. He was the last in his group of 3 who faced a receptionist. "Screwdriver operator, ma'am," said the first man.
"See Mr. Comedy in booth 7.
"Plastic extrusion, miss," said the next man.
"See Mr. Hoyt in booth 2.
She said.
"Skill?"
She asked the urbane young man in the wilted suit.
"Milling machine? Jig borer?"
"Writing," he said. "Any kind of writing."
"You mean advertising and sales promotion?"
"Yes, that's what I mean." She looked doubtful.
"Well, I don't know. We didn't put out a call for that sort of people. You can't run a machine, can you?"
"Typewriter," he said jokingly. The receptionist was a sober young woman.
"The company does not use male stenographers,"
she said.
"See Mr. Dilling in booth 26. He just might know of some advertising and sales promotion type job."
He straightened his tie and coat, forced a smile that implied he was looking into jobs at the works as a sort of lark, walked into booth 26, and extended his hand to Mr. Dilling, a man of his own age. "Mr. Dilling, my name is David Potter. I was curious to know what openings you might have in advertising and sales promotion, and thought I'd drop in for a talk." Mr. Dilling, an old hand at facing young men who tried to hide their eagerness for a job, was polite but outwardly unimpressed. "Well, you came at a bad time, I'm afraid, Mr. Potter. The competition for that kind of job is pretty stiff, as you perhaps know, and there isn't much of anything open just now." David nodded. "I see." He had no experience in asking for a job with a big organization, and Mr. Dilling was making him aware of what a fine art it was, if you couldn't run a machine. A duel was underway. "But have a seat anyway, Mr. Potter." "Thank you." He looked at his watch. "I really ought to be getting back to my paper soon." "You work on a paper around here?" "Yes, I own a weekly paper in Dorset, about 10 miles from Ilium." "Oh, you don't say. Lovely little village. Thinking of giving up the paper, are you?" "Well, no, not exactly. It's a possibility. I bought the paper soon after the war, so I've been with it for 8 years, and I don't want to go stale. I might be wise to move on. It all depends on what opens up." "You have a family?" said Mr. Dilling pleasantly. "Yes, my wife and 2 boys and 2 girls." "A nice big, well-balanced family," said Mr. Dilling. "And you're so young, too." 29, said David. He smiled. "We didn't plan it to be quite that big. It runs to twins. The boys are twins, and then several days ago the girls came." "You don't say," said Mr. Dilling. He winked. "That would certainly start a young man thinking about getting a little security, eh? With a family like that?" Both of them treated the remark casually, as though it were no more than a pleasantry between 2 family men. "It's what we wanted, actually, 2 boys, 2 girls," said David. "We didn't expect to get them this quickly, but we're glad now. As far as security goes, well, maybe I flatter myself, but I think the administrative and writing experience I've had running the paper would be worth a good bit to the right people, if something happened to the paper." "One of the big shortages in this country," said Dilling philosophically, concentrating on lighting a cigarette, "is men who know how to do things, and know how to take responsibility and get things done. I only wish there were better openings in advertising and sales promotion than the ones we've got. They're important, interesting jobs, understand, but I don't know how you'd feel about the starting salary." "Well, I'm just trying to get a lay of the land now, to see how things are. I have no idea what salary industry might pay a man like me, with my experience." "The question experienced men like yourself usually ask is, How high can I go and how fast? The answer to that is the sky is the limit for a man with drive and creative ambition. And he can go up fast or slow depending on what he's willing to do and capable of putting into the job. We might start a man like you at, say, $100 a week, but that isn't to say you'd be stuck at that level for 2 years or even 3 months. I suppose a man could keep a family on that until he got rolling, said David. You'd find the work in the publicity end just about the same as what you're doing now. Our publicity people have high standards for writing and editing and reporting, and our publicity releases don't wind up in the newspaper editors' wastebaskets. Our people do a professional job and are well respected as journalists. He stood. I've got a little matter to attend to. Take me about 10 minutes. Could you possibly stick around? I'm enjoying our talk. David looked at his watch. Oh, I guess I could spare another 10 or 15 minutes. Dilling was back in his booth in 3 minutes, chuckling over some private joke. Just talking on the phone with Lou Flammer, the publicity supervisor. Needs a new stenographer. Lou's a card. Everybody here's crazy about Lou. Old weekly man himself, and I guess that's where he learned to be so easy to get along with. Just to feel him out for the hell of it, I told him about you. I didn't commit you to anything, just said what you told me, that you were keeping your eyes open, and guess what Lou said? Guess what, Nan, said David Potter to his wife on the telephone. He was wearing only his shorts and was phoning from the company hospital. When you come home from the hospital tomorrow, you'll be coming home to a solid citizen who pulls down $110 every week. I just got my badge and passed my physical. Oh, said Nan, startled. It happened awfully fast, didn't it? I didn't think you were going to plunge right in. What's there to wait for? Well, I don't know. I mean, how do you know what you're getting into? You've never worked for anybody but yourself, and don't know anything about getting along in a huge organization. I knew you were going to talk to the Ilium people about a job, but I thought you just planned to stick with the paper another year anyway. In another year, I'll be 30, Nan. Well, that's pretty old to be starting a career in industry. There are guys my age here who've been working their way up for 10 years. That's pretty stiff competition, and it'll be that much stiffer a year from now. And how do you know Jason will still want to buy the paper a year from now? Ed Jason was David's assistant, a recent college graduate whose father wanted to buy the paper for him. And this job that opened up today in publicity won't be open a year from now, Nan. Now was the time to switch, this afternoon. Nan sighed. I suppose. But it doesn't seem like you. The works are fine for some people. They seem to thrive on that life. But you've always been so free, and you love the paper, you know you do. I do, said David. It'll break my heart to let it go. It was a swell thing to do when we had no kids, but it's a shaky living now, with the kids to educate and all that. But, hon, said Nan, the paper's making money. It could fold like that, said David, snapping his fingers. A daily could come in with a one-page insert at Dorset News, or Dorset likes its little paper too much to let that happen. They like you and the job you're doing too much. David nodded. What about 10 years from now? What about 10 years from now in the works? What about 10 years from now anywhere? It's a better bet that the works will still be here. I haven't got the right to take long chances anymore, Nan. Not with the big family counting on me. It won't be a very happy big family, darling. If you're not doing what you want to do, I want you to go on being happy the way you've been. Driving around the countryside, getting news, and talking and selling ads, coming home and writing what you want to write, what you believe in. You in the works. It's what I've got to do. All right, if you say so. I've had my say. It's still journalism, high-grade journalism, said David. Just don't sell the paper to Jason right away. Put him in charge, but let's wait a month or so, please. No sense in waiting, but if you really want to, all right. David held up a brochure he'd been handed after his physical examination was completed. Listen to this, Nan. Under the company security package, I get $10 a day for hospital expenses in case of illness. Full pay for 26 weeks. $100 for special hospital expenses. I get life insurance for about half of what it would cost on the outside. For whatever I put into the government bonds under the payroll savings plan, the company will give me a 5% bonus in company stock 12 years from now. I get 2 weeks vacation with pay after each year. And after 15 years, I get 3 weeks. Get free membership in the company country club. After 25 years, I'll be eligible for a pension of at least $125 a month. And much more if I rise in the organization and stick with it for more than 25 years. Good heavens, said Nan. I'd be a damn fool to pass that up, Nan. I still wish you'd waited until the little girls and I were home and settled, and you got used to them. I feel you were panicked into this. No, this is it, Nan. Give the little girls a kiss apiece for me. I've got to go now and report to my new supervisor. Your what? Supervisor. Oh, I thought that's what you said, but I couldn't be sure. Goodbye, Nan. Goodbye, David. David clipped his badge to his lapel and stepped out of the hospital and onto the hot asphalt floor of the world within the fences of the works. Dull thunder came from the buildings around him. A truck honked irritably at him, and a cinder blew in his eye. He dabbed at the cinder with the corner of his handkerchief and finally got it out. When his vision was restored, he looked around himself for Building 31, where his new office and supervisor were. 4 busy streets fanned out from where he stood, and each stretched seemingly to infinity. He stopped a passer-by who seemed to be in less of a desperate hurry than the rest. Could you please tell me how to find Building 31, Mr. Flammer's office? Said David. The man he asked was old and bright-eyed, apparently getting as much pleasure from the clangor and smells and nervous activity of the works as David would have gotten from April in Paris. He squinted at David's badge and then at his face. Just starting out, are you? Yes, sir, my first day. What do you know about that? The old man shook his head wonderingly and winked. Just starting out. Building 31? Well, sir, when I first came to work here in 1899, you could see Building 31 from here, with nothing between us and it but mud. Now it's all built up. See the water tank up there about a quarter of a mile? Well, Avenue 17 branches off there, and you follow that almost to the end and then cut across the tracks and... Just starting out, eh? Well, I better walk you up there. Came here for just a minute to talk to the pension folks, but that can wait. I'd enjoy the walk. Thank you. 50-year man I was, he said proudly. He led David up avenues and alleys, across tracks, over ramps and through tunnels, through buildings filled with spitting, whining, grumbling machinery, and down identical corridors with green walls and numbered black doors. Can't be a 50-year man no more, said the old man pityingly. Can't come to work until you're 18 nowadays, and you got to retire when you're 65. He poked his thumb under his lapel to make a small gold button protrude. On it was the number 50, superimposed on the company trademark. Something none of you youngsters can look forward to wearing someday, no matter how much you want one. Very nice button, said David. The old man pointed out a door. Here's Flammer's office. Keep your mouth shut till you find out who's who and what they think. Good luck. Lou Flammer's secretary was not at her desk, so David walked to the door of the inner office and knocked. Yes, said a man's voice sweetly. Please come in. David opened the door. Mr. Flammer? Lou Flammer was a short, fat man in his early 30s. He beamed at David. What can I do to help you? I'm David Potter, Mr. Flammer. Flammer's Santa Claus-like demeanor decayed. He leaned back, propped his feet on his desktop, and stuffed a cigar which he'd concealed in his cupped hand into his large mouth. Hell, thought you were a scoutmaster. He looked at his desk clock, which was mounted in the miniature of the company's newest automatic dishwasher. Boy Scouts tore at the works. Supposed to stop it here 15 minutes ago for me to give him a talk on scouting and industry. 56% of the federal apparatus's executives were Eagle Scouts. David started to laugh, but found himself doing it all alone, and he stopped. Amazing figure, he said. It is, said Flammer judiciously. Says something for scouting and something for industry. Now, before I tell you where your desk is, I'm supposed to explain the rating sheet system. That's what the manual says. Dilling tell you about that? Not that I recall. There was an awful lot of information all at once. Well, there's not much to it, said Flammer. Every 6 months a rating sheet is made out to you, to let you and to let us know just where you stand and what sort of progress you've been making. 3 people who've been close to your work make out independent ratings of you, and then all the information is brought together on a master copy, with carbons for you, me, and personnel, and the original for the head of advertising and sales promotion division. It's very helpful for everybody, you most of all, if you take it the right way. He waved a rating figure at David. See, blanks for appearance, loyalty, promptness, initiative, cooperativeness, things like that. You'll make out the rating sheets on other people too, and whoever does the rating is anonymous. I see. David felt himself reddening with resentment. He fought the emotion. telling himself that his reaction was a small-town man's, and that it would do him good to learn to think as a member of a great, efficient team. "Now about pay, Potter," said Flammer. "There'll never be any point in coming to ask me for a raise. That's all done on the basis of the rating sheets and the salary curve." He rummaged through his drawers and found a graph, which he spread out on the desk. "Here, now you see this curve? Well, it's the average salary curve for men with college educations in the company. See, you can follow it up. At 30, the average man makes this much, at 40, this much, and so on. Now this curve above shows what men with real growth potential can make. See? It's a little higher, and it curves upward a little faster. You're how old?" 29, said David, trying to see what the salary figures were that ran alongside one side of the graph. Flammer saw him doing it, and pointedly kept them hidden with his forearm. "Uh-huh." Flammer wet the tip of the pencil with his tongue, and drew a small X on the graph, squarely astride the average man's curve. "There you are." David looked at the mark, and then followed the curve with his eyes across the paper, over little bumps, up gentle slopes, along desolate plateaus, until it died abruptly at the margin, which represented age 65. The graph left no questions to be asked, and was deaf to argument. David looked from it to the human being he would also be dealing with. "You had a weekly once, did you, Mr. Flammer?" Flammer laughed. "In my naive, idealistic youth, Potter, I sold ads to feed stores, gathered gossip, set type, and wrote editorials that were going to save the world, by God." David smiled admiringly. "What a circus, huh?" "Circus?" said Flammer. "Freak show, maybe. It's a good way to grow up fast. Took me about 6 months to find out I was killing myself for peanuts, that a little guy couldn't even save a village 3 blocks long, and that the world wasn't worth saving anyway. So I started looking out for number one, sold out to a chain, came down here, and here I am." The telephone rang. "Yes," said Flammer sweetly. "Publicity." His benign smile faded. "No, you're kidding, aren't you? Where? Really? This is no gag? All right. Lord, what a time for this to happen. I haven't got anybody here. I can't get away on account of the goddamn Boy Scouts." He hung up. "Potter, you've got your first assignment. There's a deer loose in the works." "Deer?" "Don't know how he got in, but he's in. Plumber went to fix a drinking fountain out on the softball diamond across building 217 and flushed a deer out from under the bleachers. Now they got him cornered up there around the metallurgy lab." He stood and hammered on his desk. "Murder! This story will go all over the country, Potter. Talk about the human interest. Front page of all the times Pharrell happened to be out at the Ashtaluba Works taking pictures of the new viscometer that got cooked up out there. All right, I'll call up a hack photographer downtown, Potter, and get him to meet you out at the metallurgy lab. You get the story and see that he gets the shots, okay?" He led David into the hallway. "Just go back the way you came. Turn left instead of right at the fractional horsepower motors. Cut through the hydraulic engineering. Catch bus 11 on Avenue 9. It'll take you right there. After you get the story and the pictures, we'll get them cleared by the law division, the plant security office, our department head and buildings on the grounds, and shoot them right out. Now get going. That deer isn't on the payroll. He isn't going to wait for you. Come to work today. Tomorrow your work will be on every front page in the country. If we can get it approved. The name of the photographer you're going to meet is McGarvey. Got it? You're in the big time now, Potter. We'll all be watching." He shut the door behind David. David found himself trotting down the hall, down a staircase, and into an alley, brushing roughly past persons in a race against time. Many turned to watch the purposely young man with admiration. On and on he strode, his mind seething with information. Flammer, Building 31. Deer, Metallurgy Lab, Photographer, Al Tappan. No, Al Tappan is in Ashtaluba. Flenny the hack photographer. No, McHammer. No, McHammer's the new supervisor. 56% Eagle Scouts. Deer by Viscometer Laboratory. No, Viscometer's in Ashtaluba. Call Donner the new supervisor and get instructions right. 3 weeks vacation after 15 years. Donner, not new supervisor. Anyway, new supervisor in Building 319. No, Fanner in Building 399989183319. David stopped, blocked by a grimy window at the end of a blind alley. All he knew was that he'd never been there before, and that his memory had blown a gasket, and that the deer was not on the payroll. The air in the alley was thick with tango music and the stench of scorched insulation. David scrubbed away at some of the crust on the window with his handkerchief, praying for a glimpse of something that made sense. Inside were ranks of women at benches, rocking their heads in time to the music, and dipping soldering irons into great nests of colored wires that crept past them on endless belts. One of them looked up and saw David, and winked in tango rhythm. David fled. At the mouth of the alley, he stopped a man and asked him if he'd heard anything about a deer in the works. The man shook his head and looked at David oddly, making David aware of how frantic he must look. I heard it was out by the lab, David said more calmly. Which lab? Said the man. That's what I'm not sure of, said David. There's more than one? Chemical lab? Said the man. Materials testing lab? Paint lab? Insulation lab? No, I don't think it's any of those, said David. Well, I could stand here all afternoon naming labs and probably not hit the right one. Sorry, I've got to go. You don't know what building they've got the differential analyzer in, do you? Sorry, no, said David. He stopped several other people, none of whom knew anything about the deer, and he tried to retrace his steps to the office of his supervisor, whatever his name was. He was swept this way and then that by the currents of the works, stranded in backwaters, sucked back into the mainstream, and his mind was more and more numbed, and the mere reflexes of self-preservation were more and more in charge. He chose a building at random and walked inside for a momentary respite from the summer heat, and was deafened by the clangor of steel sheets being cut and punched and being smashed into strange shapes by great hammers that dropped out of the smoke and dust overhead. A hairy-muscled man was seated near the door on a wooden stool, watching a giant lathe turn a bar of steel the size of a small silo. David now had the idea of going through a company phone directory until he recognized his supervisor's name. He called to the machinist from a few feet away, but his voice was lost in the din. He tapped the man's shoulder. Telephone around here? The man nodded. He cupped his hands around David's ear and shouted, Up that and through the... Down crashed the hammer. Turn left and keep going until you... An overhead crane dropped a stack of steel plates. 4 doors down from there it is. Can't miss it. David, his ears ringing and his head aching, walked into the street again and chose another door. Here was peace and air conditioning. He was in the lobby of an auditorium where a group of men were examining a box studded with dials and switches that was spotlighted and mounted on a revolving platform. Please, miss, he said to a receptionist by the door. Could you tell me where I could find a telephone?
It's right around the corner, sir, she said. But I'm afraid no one is permitted here today but the crystallographers. Are you with them?
Yes, said David.
Oh, well, come right in. Name?
He told her, and a man sitting next to her lettered it on a badge the size of a pie pan. The badge was hung around his chest, and David headed for the telephone. A grinning, bald, big-toothed man wearing a badge that said Stan Dunkel Sales caught him and steered him to the display. Dr. Potter, said Dunkel, I ask you, is that the way to build an X-ray spectrogoniometer, or is that the way to build an X-ray spectrogoniometer? Yes, said David, that's the way, all right.
Martini, Dr. Potter,
said a maid offering a tray. David emptied the martini in one gloriously hot, stinging gulp. What features do you want in an X-ray spectrogoniometer, Doctor? Said Dunkel. It should be sturdy, Mr. Dunkel, said David, and he left Dunkel there, pledging his reputation that there wasn't a sturdier one on Earth. In the phone booth, David had barely got through the telephone's directory A's before the name of his supervisor miraculously returned to his consciousness. Flammer! He found the number and dialed.
Mr. Flammer's office,
said a woman. Could I speak to him, please? This is David Potter.
Oh, Mr. Potter. Well, Mr. Flammer is somewhere out in the works now, but he left a message for you. He said there's an added twist to the deer story. When they catch the deer, the venison is going to be used at the Quarter-Century Club picnic.
Quarter-Century Club? Said David.
Oh, that's really something, Mr. Potter. It's for people who've been with the company 25 years or more. Free drinks and cigars and just the best of everything. They have a wonderful time.
Anything else about the deer?
Nothing he hasn't already told you, she said, and she hung up.
David Potter, with a third martini in his otherwise empty stomach, stood in the front of the auditorium and looked both ways for a deer. But our X-ray spectrogoniometer is sturdy, Dr. Potter! Stan Dunkel called to him from the auditorium steps. Across the street was a patch of green bordered by hedges. David pushed through the hedges into the outfield of a softball diamond. He crossed it and went behind the bleachers, where there was a cool shade, and he sat down with his back to a wire mesh fence which separated one end of the works from a deep pine woods. There were 2 gates in the fence, but both were wired shut. David was going to sit there for just a moment, long enough to get his nerve back, to take bearings. Maybe he could leave a message for Flammer, saying he'd suddenly fallen ill, which was essentially true, or, "There he goes!" cried somebody from the other side of the diamond. There were gleeful cries, shouted orders, the sounds of men running. A deer with broken antlers dashed under the bleachers, saw David, and ran frantically into the open again along the fence. He ran with a limp, and his reddish-brown coat was streaked with soot and grease. "Easy now! Don't rush him! Just keep him there! Shoot into the woods, not the works!" David came out from under the bleachers to see a great semicircle of men, several ranks deep, closing in slowly on the corner of the fence in which the deer was at bay. In the front of the rank, there were a dozen company policemen with drawn pistols. Other members of the posse carried sticks and rocks and lariats hastily fashioned from war. The deer pawed the grass, and bucked and jerked its broken antlers in the direction of the crowd. "Hold it!" shouted a familiar voice. A company limousine rumbled across the diamond to the back of the crowd. Leaning out of the window was Lou Flammer, David's supervisor. "Don't shoot until we get a picture of him alive!" commanded Flammer. He pulled a photographer out of the limousine and pushed him into the front rank. Flammer saw David standing alone by the fence, his back to the gate. "Good boy, Potter!" called Flammer. "Right on the ball! Photographer got lost and I had to bring him here myself." The photographer fired his flashbulbs. The deer bucked and sprinted along the fence toward David. David jerked open the gate, and a second later the deer's white tail was twinkling through the woods and gone. The profound silence was broken first by the whistling of a switch engine, and then by the click of a latch as David stepped into the woods and closed the gate behind him. He didn't look back.